Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine, The Money Man. I'm with Mark Keohane and Zels. Guys, another interesting game this weekend for the Boks. On paper you would be thinking, okay, the Boks can go there, it should be pretty simple, but as history would prove, Mark, that's not exactly the recipe for a win going to Australia.
No, 4 from 29 since 1996. Haven't won since 2013. Never played in Adelaide. And last year, we won an incredible series against the Lions, smashed Argentina with two different teams by 20 points, and went over there, and I was cock-a-hoop. I beat my chest. I called them pussies. I said, there's no way they'll win. They stunned me in the first one, humbled me in the second, and it was business as usual. South Africa lost there. So I wrote a piece today to say, I don't know what they put in the bottled water, but it's our kryptonite. We just turn from granite to putty when we get there. And Zels and I were chatting about it. Is it the style that Australia plays? Is it at times a non-confrontational style? Although last year they were very confrontational. Dave Rennie's teams always play you off the ball, lots of niggle. And we were caught by surprise in that first set and then tried to play like them in the second and took a 4-try beating. So it's the least passionate I've been since the World Cup playoffs, looking at a Springbok test thinking, we're playing Australia at 7:30 in the morning on Saturday. They're a shambles as they have been for a while. They've won 10 out of 25 tests under Rennie. And I say with absolutely no conviction that the Boks will win. It's just one of those weird kind of build-ups, given how disappointing they were at Ellis Park.
Zelen, what do you think it is that makes playing in Australia a disaster for South Africa?
I mean, it's a wild guess, Kev. I don't really know the answer to the question. I feel like we pick ourselves up for the All Blacks. We generally play Australia around about the time that we play the All Blacks. I think this team and Bok teams in the past have shown that they struggle to keep going, to be consistent, to stay at the level that they need to be to play at their best. And I think there's maybe a looking ahead or a slight letdown after playing the All Blacks or before playing the All Blacks. Maybe our eye isn't really on the ball with the Wallabies. I think they're also a team that historically don't have the cattle to take you on up front, which is what Mark said. So they have to find clever ways to disrupt you, and they've been very successful at that. The scrum is a great example. The Australians were renowned for years for picking guys that weren't necessarily powerful scrummagers, but technically could sucker punch you. And I think we've fallen for those sucker punches. Last year was a classic case of that final scrum. Us conceding the penalty and Quaid kicking it over to win the game. So I don't really know exactly what the answer to that question is, but I feel like when you talk about the All Blacks, our guys get their tails up generally, and when you talk about the Wallabies, I think most Bok fans would be surprised to hear that we don't have a great record against them. They're almost, in some weird way, like the sort of unseen enemy, you know? We know we have a rivalry with them, we assume we control them and we dominate them, but we don't.
I find it, sorry Kev, I find it very much like when our cricketers play Australia, there's passion. When we play the Black Caps, so what? When we play the All Blacks, wow, you're playing for your great-grandfather. The family say you have to beat the All Blacks, and then you've proved you're a Springbok. Oh, by the way, we lost to the Wallabies on the way. Doesn't matter. And even when I was with the Boks in the early 2000s, there was a definite shift in intensity. You knew when it was All Black Test Match week. It was Australian Test Match week. All right. When they hear we pump them, when we go there, they pump us. It's the complete switch, and I think that's why they've played 50-plus games, and it's 25-25, and it's like 1 or 2 points in terms of aggregate score. And some very good Wallaby teams have been smashed in South Africa by fairly ordinary Springbok teams, and the converse is true going there. The 95 World Cup champions, the 2007 World Cup champions and the 2019 World Cup champions. The very next year they went to Australia, they took a beating. Yeah. They were never in the games.
But in fairness, those were better Australian teams than now.
At times, Kev, but then you look at how Australia played against Argentina, for example. That looked like an Australian side in South Africa. Fell apart, was struggling. You just look at the way that South Africa played against Australia last year in Australia, and then how they lifted their game against New Zealand for those last two tests in Australia. So it's not necessarily Australia, it's the Wallabies in Australia that really troubles us.
Spot on.
So what do we make? With that said, looking at a ridiculous record in Australia, probably that must be the worst record that we have away in that time period.
Yeah, I mean our record on percentages is still a little bit worse in New Zealand, but we've played a couple of games less, but we've won a couple of games more in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I just think when I look at this,
Then the percentage has to be higher on that basis.
on what basis?
Well, if we've played less games and won more games in New Zealand, then the winning percentage has.
That's right. Thanks. I appreciate your math. It's abysmal for both of them, but it's actually very bad in Australia. Okay? very bad.
Sorry, Mark, you're not getting about that by me.
No, it's all right, mate.
So let's look at let's look at the team then, because to me, someone asked me what I thought of the team, and my instant response was disappointed. You know, it's Dwayne Vermeulen. I think he should be coming off the bench. I mean, he's not in form, hasn't played for ages, and he looked nowhere in the game in New Zealand. So why not give these guys that are doing so well in the URC and have form? Why not reward that? Because let's be honest, Dwayne's on the wrong side of 30.
He's on the wrong side of 35. Zels, I know you got big opinions on that side. I've heard it all week.
Yeah, no, look, as we spoke about last week, huge fan of Dwayne. Definitely think he's in the twilight of his career. Definitely think that they should be stretching their legs with some of the younger guys that have shown form in the URC. Again, ultimately, you have to back the coach and his planning and his thinking.
Why do you have to back the coach?
Well, because those are the guys that are working with these players every week, so they obviously have insight with those guys.
Well, what insight did they have against the All Blacks that put Dwayne on the field?
So what I'm saying is, you have to, if the coach picks the guy, it would be for a reason. But again,
what reason did he pick Dwayne?
Well, I don't know. I'm not the coach. So what I'm saying is, though, the success of that selection, though, the coach is responsible for it. So he picked Dwayne at Ellis Park, and they didn't win. He picked Joe Dweba at Ellis Park, and they didn't win.
You're sounding like a snowflake saying
the coach has to live with the consequences of the decision. So it's not up to us to pick the team. It's up to the coach to pick the team. But ultimately, it's up to us to critique what the results of that are. So the point that I'm trying to make is, if it was us, we'd play Evan Roos. If it was us, we'd play Ulrich Loh. They've decided to go for Dwayne. That's fine. This week, Dwayne and Joe both have to step up and deliver. It's an odd selection to me from the outside looking in, because we struggled last week because of two guys coming in ice cold, not necessarily ready to go. We've stayed with those two guys, and then we've doubled up on that sort of thinking by putting two ice cold guys on the bench to close out the game in Alton Yankees and Frans Steyn. So that's where I don't understand the selections. It seems to me like we're rolling the dice again unnecessarily.
And interesting enough, I think SA Rugby magazine, the website, ran a poll on who should be the backup to Pollard. And Pollard I'm not convinced on myself, but I mean, who should back him up? And Alton Yankees, I think, got 2% of the vote out of 10,000 plus votes.
Yeah, he got 4% of the vote, and he was stone last out of 7 options, which included Kerwin Bosch.
Included me.
So 96% of readers don't want to see Alton Yankees backing up Andre Pollard.
Look, the Yankees is a very interesting subject, because it talks to everything we've been chatting about all season. He's played 40 minutes of Test rugby. He's played 40 minutes of rugby all year.
Yeah.
So he's in no different position than he was before they threw him to the Wolves against Wales. And now he's coming off the bench. So Alton Yankees has been in the mix since 2012. What I find disappointing about this 2-match series is you've won 4 out of 29. If it's 4 out of 31 and you've gone there with kids, they're going to be wiser for next year, for the World Cup.
Yeah.
They're going to be wiser for the future of South African rugby. We go back with the same guys who keep on getting beaten there. What have we learned? Now, Rassie Rasmus and Jacques Nino will keep on saying they got answers in a second test against Wales. I think that's patently unfair to players they didn't want. Where
Correct.
The converse could have been, you got an answer about Dwayne, he wasn't ready. At 36, maybe he's gone. No, we know how good he is. We know how good France is when he comes back. We know what we got in Alton. But then what have you got in Alton? Because when he's had to play the big test, he hasn't really succeeded.
Well, I think he was single-handedly responsible for the loss against Wales. He had an atrocious game.
Well, unfortunately, he's had too many of those when he's been given the responsibility. So when I looked at that box setup, it was, Warwick Galant has been in the mix for 5 years. He's not going to start in a World Cup final on the win. He's not going to start at fullback. But they rave about Kane and Moody. Stick him straight in. Precisely. They did it with Kurtley Arendse and he blossomed. Precisely. So they will say they've got these systems, they've got their projects. So what Zels was saying earlier is that's the coach's right. He gets hired and fired by his results.
No, but you know what disappoints me is you know, it used to be with the media. You could ask the coach and demand an explanation. There seems to be no sort of explanation that comes from the Springbok.
Well, we've chatted about it all week. Exactly that point. Discussion, debate. They've got it wrong 41% of the time. The win record is 59%. Now, just asking those questions, the public have been giving me heaps this week to say they win the big ones, the World Cup, the Lions series, they beat the All Blacks, the rest doesn't matter. So my response was, losing to England doesn't matter, losing to Wales for the first time doesn't matter, losing to the All Blacks doesn't matter, losing to Australia twice doesn't matter. Where's the balance and perspective in, for every decision that Rassie and Jacques have got right, they get another one wrong? And what is the consequence to that? So they've put all their eggs in the World Cup basket, because if they don't go and win it, the interim period between the Lions series and this would be seen as a bit of a disaster with the same players. So it's a hell of a risk to take to say, we will go and back it up and win it. And if they're going to go and back it up and win it, I thought this was the year that we know what we got with those World Cup players who won it before. We put them on ice a bit and we flooded with those youngsters. And what happened to New Zealand at Ellis Park? They were basically forced to play kids, and the kids came through.
Yeah.
The youngster, the young front rower, the young hooker, a guy that was out of favour came through and gave them the hard and edge in terms of the loose forwards. We had those youngsters here, but it's like we have to. I mean, Ulrich Lowe, Evan Rus, they've been in the mix all season. They've both played a half of rugby. So, you know, how are they better for not playing? They could only have been better for playing against the All Blacks and the Wallabies. Even if Dwayne is going to be your first choice, even if Peter Steff is going to be your first choice.
Mark, that's the thing you want to do. You want to go there and bleed the young and see where they are, because a year's time is still a long way away. I'd want to see you. And if you go there and you lose to Australia with your young players, then you know. But, I mean, they're in form. I just don't get the selection.
There's no coincidence if you look at, and it was forced on France 2 seasons ago, or last season, because of the top 14 finals, they had to go and they had to isolate them. They had to go with 20 players, their top players, absent. And they lost the series, France 2-1, that they should have won 3-0. The first one through the implosion that only France can do. And then somehow Australia miraculously won a test that they played with 14 players for close to 50 minutes. Of that group that went there, so many broke into the French side after that and were at the forefront of France being the most dominant team in Europe. So, you know, sometimes you think we have to have a situation forced on us to get the result, because this group is so tight-knit, they're so close, and they fall back on one thing. We won the World Cup in 2019. We never thought we would. 2023 is where it's going to matter. And I just feel there's lost opportunities all the time to bring that second tier in. And I have a concern that we're going to get to the World Cup with a few players 6 months too old and too many 6 months too inexperienced to actually win the World Cup.
And I mean, so at the end of the day, again, coming back to the coaching setup, if they've decided that the guys that won the 2019 World Cup, they're taking to the 2023 World Cup, there's no debate, that's fine. Come out and say it, because you're creating this uncertainty by pretending that there are guys that have a shot at breaking into the squad when clearly they don't have a shot at breaking into the squad, because you're bringing guys back. Franz Steyn hasn't played any rugby since May, I think, when he did his hamstring playing Curry Cup and chugging beers with the guys on the sideline. It was lovely to see, but that's the guy we're bringing back in now to the Boks squad ahead of potentially having a look at Kane and Moody. So it seems like they've decided that squad is going to stay unchanged. Again, I would just say, then come out and say that, because a lot of this conjecture is around the idea that there are opportunities for youngsters to break in, and it doesn't seem like there is.
Well, it's interesting, because what does Rassie know that 96% of the rugby-loving population in this country knows? What does he know that they don't know? But let's forget about that for a second. What do you guys think of Pollard? He hasn't exactly...
Look, I thought Pollard was very good in Nelspruit, with Jaden Hendricks giving him that half a second on the ball. And I think he's streets ahead of any fly-off in this country. And the natural succession plan for him should be Damien Willemse shifts to 12 and ultimately shifts to 10. And I would have preferred to have Damien Willemse as the backup to Pollard and say to him, you've got to go kick that penalty like you did against Wales. You've got the BMT. because you would grow in his game, you grow in his versatility, and then be a bit more expansive with your bench. I just feel they're going back to the same old, and the world is starting to move on.
Yeah.
And we're becoming an easier team to play against because we're such a settled team. And if you do manage to stop certain elements of our game, you can beat us, as the All Blacks showed at Ellis Park in Wales. It's really troubled us at Loftus, and for the first 50 minutes at Newlands, were giving us a scrap. So I look back at that World Cup team, and it's like that final against England was magnificent. The Nelspruit test, absolutely brilliant. It's probably the best test match I've seen them play in terms of intelligence, the way, the tempo they played it at, and how they approached it. But they couldn't get that intense, because to play like that, you've got to have the intensity. And are we a side that can get up for that one game and knock anyone over, but we can't maintain it? Because the stats say we can't. 59% win record since the World Cup is not dominating world rugby.
So we're facing a team that got drubbed, and should have lost both tests in Argentina. What are we to make of the team, their team selection?
Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of Dave Rennie. I'm an outspoken fan of Dave Rennie. I think that they are building towards the World Cup. I think they will be solid at the World Cup. I think he's working with some limitations there in Australia in terms of the quality of players that he has. But, I mean, he brings back Noah Lolesio. They've got key talents in key positions. They've got a rugged back line. They've got some young guns who are hungry in the forward pack. I like Australia. I like Australia to bounce back this week. I think they did struggle in Argentina, but like Mark was talking about, in Australia, rugby is not a tier 1 sport there. It really does suck hind tit there. And so when they play in Australia, they definitely step up to produce and almost promote the game there in a big way. I think the pressure is on from the top down.
Yeah, I think netball dwarfs it.
Exactly. So, I mean,
nothing against netball. The woke culture, please.
They definitely play for respect there, and I expect them to bounce back big time this week. And I like the makeup of this team. It is young and inexperienced, but it is growing in the right direction.
I wouldn't say you're a fan of Dave Rennie. I'd say you have your nose so far up his ass.
Exactly. I call him shoelaces. So the only thing I see hanging out Dave Rennie's arse is your shoelaces, mate. He's 10 from 25. I know he's a good coach. He loses 2 against the Boks, 2 against the All Blacks. He's 10 from 29. He gets pumped by England on the end of your tour. He's 10 from 30. No coach should be in a job on that. But there's this belief that, and the one thing I do love about the Australians, and especially their rugby union players, they can lose 48-17 this week, and they still believe they can beat you the next week. And they have this incredible confidence. We'll beat them 48-17 and wonder how we did it and believe we can get beaten the next week. They just have, and some say it's an arrogance, it's a confidence that, you know what, you're only as good as your last game.
And I think, Mark, you just hit the nail on the head for me, which I was going to try and, when you look at the record, there has to be something. And I think one of the things the Australians do well with the South Africans is they get under their skin. They take them off their game plan. They're an arrogant bunch of lads, but and they have a very unique sense of humor. And they do like taking the piss on the field, and they get under the South African skin. It's almost as if whatever plan the South Africans had goes out the window as soon as some sort of verbal confrontation, which goes on all the time.
I mean, they're a clever side, because if you look at that England pack, I mean, Eddie's England should have destroyed them 3-0. They were hanging on to win a series. Dropped the test that they should never have dropped. They had a one-man advantage. So they're a clever side. They have added physicality, but they've had a wretched run with injuries. They don't know who their 10 is. Quay Cooper was going to be the answer. They brought back a 32-year-old Brendan Foley, who last played 5 years ago. Curtly Beale's back in the mix. They pulled a kid from grade rugby. The youngster from the Brumbies. He's had some big moments. They're still not convinced he's the 10. So we again have an opportunity to cast more doubt into their system, as we had with the All Blacks at Ellis Park.
But that's what it is, Mark. I mean, so you just named all the reasons why the Boks can't get up to play the Wallabies, because they're favourites. They're favourites to beat these guys, and we can't live with the favourites tag. We love it when we come up against Dan Carter, Richie McCaw, and people are saying, you guys don't stand a chance to beat the All Blacks. You go into Australia to play the Wallabies, and you're the favourites to beat them in Australia. And people say, but you're playing this kid from the Brumbies, and you're playing this guy, and you're playing this guy. We hate that. We don't know how to deal with that.
And they're favoured by 4.5 points, and 18-10 outright. Meaning that if you put down 100 on Australia, you'll get 280 back, which includes your bet. So let's. I think we've spoken enough. about the team. What are the conditions going to be like there?
God, I don't know, but it's not good enough for cricket. Because it really is a cricket. Adelaide is like, it's Don Bradman, it's South Australia, it's kind of like where the Don scored all his runs. Yeah. So I don't think conditions it doesn't matter which conditions it is. I think we know how we're going to play. It's going to be closer to Nelspruit.
It's a bit humid though, isn't it?
Yeah. But again, I don't know what gets sucked out of our guys. They run on the field, they just never look like they're this. It was once in 2013, Heineke Meyer flew half the team over from England and they smashed them in Brisbane. No one could believe that. 5 tries, I think, 38-13.
So that week, Mark, everybody was writing South Africa off and saying, no, the loose forwards aren't fast enough. Ruan Pino was going to play scrum off. Question marks on the fast.
You can't bring Mornay Stanley from Paris in just 2 days before a game. And boom, we did it. Now,
you said we can't do it, we'll show you.
So you have a theory that we won't do it this weekend, and now when we get written off, we'll come out in Sydney, produce a great performance.
That's my gut feel. We'll win one of these two, and it'll be next week.
Kev, what have you got there, man?
18 degrees.
There's an 18 points differential.
So precipitation, 7% chance, which means no. And the wind is a comfortable 13 kilometers. So ideal rugby conditions, actually. So let's get into the prediction.
Okay, well, firstly, I want to say I've never known a Boks side to play well at 7:30 in the morning. They used to play terribly at 4:30 in the morning. So 7:30 is kickoff. People remember that. And before we get into the predictions, Kev, this man has put another $1,000 reward out there.
On 3 platforms.
On 3 platforms. Daddy's Deals, SA Rugby, and the Money Man platform. Yeah. $1,000 if you predict the correct score. There's already 18,000 entrants. My God, I hope they don't all have the correct score.
23-18.
And with a reach of nearly 500,000 already just on the one platform, which is Money Man.
If they all get the correct score, then I'll be known as the Beans and Toast Man.
Exactly.
Eating for the rest of the year.
So before we just get to predictions, I just want to say one thing. Oxenshire, big test for him. He was the one who was asked to close out that first test last year. Technically was found out. Some say inexperience cost him there. It should have been his penalty. But he wasn't good enough in that moment. I wasn't overly impressed with him in that first half against the All Blacks. And Dweber's got to go out there and show he can play a complete 40 minutes and actually do his basics right. And it's to me, where we normally get that early dominance against Australia, I don't think we're going to get the dominance there. And it's going to be, does our bench come on and save us? And it's not the bomb squad bench. They've picked the bomb squad bench, 6-2. And a lot of unknowns there. And it's a bit like in the Liverpool-Manchester United game. They threw a lot of youngsters and said, just go mad for 45 minutes. And Liverpool didn't know what to hit them. I just hope it's not the case that we feel we've got to sit back and wait and see what Australia has got. Let's go and just dismantle them as early as we can and score a famous win.
Well, let's get to the predictions then.
Go, Mark.
Let's play ball.
Marcus?
When in doubt, Boks by 10. I'm going with the Boks by 10. No conviction, just hope. There's no rugby argument that suggests the Boks should lose, but history shows me that it's meant nothing since 1996, and they invariably lose. 4 wins in 29, but I think they will change it in Adelaide. I've got them double digits, Boks by 10. My bloody green.
Well, I hope you're right. I'm going to go Australia 28, South Africa 25. I think the Wallabies win this game. I think there is a slow start. I think the cold backs on the bench, if we have to turn to them, it will be a problem. We've got a new right wing. We've got issues and question marks around the hooker position. I think they'll challenge the line out nicely. I hope I'm completely wrong on this, but Wallabies for the win.
32-22, by the way, my team.
Yeah. Look, it's a horrible game to gauge because there's a lot of stuff going against the Boks. I don't like the team selection, the traveling distance. It's never easy to settle in, to acclimatize and get your sleeping patterns right over there. It just is. I've done that trip so many times, and I never came right. You've got the Boks coming off playing the All Blacks, so they're due for another sort of low because they supposed to get themselves up for such a high for that test. You've got an Australian team that before their performance against Argentina were certainly progressing. And you've got history. So I cannot back the Boks. I want to, My heart says to back them, but I never bet with my heart. I think Australia win this game 25-20, and another disappointing result for the Boks. And we find out that Dwayne shouldn't have started, that Dwaba shouldn't have started, that Yankees shouldn't have been on the bench. And we sort of find out that maybe what we're doing is not good preparation for the World Cup. But I'm sure that Rassi has a plan. He's a smarter man than I am when it comes to rugby. But
Well, thanks for giving him the team talk. That clip will probably be played over and over and over with a hearse behind it.
how can you bet on the Boks? The odds are just,
This is why.
yeah.
This is why. How can I ever bet for Australia?
Look,
Anyone who plays Australia, I'm betting for them.
Look, there's a lot. I've been completely deflated by seeing that Bok performance the week before, and for me, I hope it's a bet I'd love to lose, But I'll be backing I'll be backing Australia for very small money, because when my heart's on it, I don't play with.
I just hope the right wing finishes the game. Morikalant gets through the 80 minutes. We don't have to make another substitution with the whole backline shuffling to accommodate a wing injury. Please.
And look, prove us wrong. Always happy.
Look, in principle, I can never back anyone against Australia. I'm going Boks by 10. I'm the sole Boks supporter here. They wearing Aussie gold. I'm wearing Bok green.
We're not wearing Aussie gold.
Sprinkled with gold. I'm going with the heart. My mind says, how can you ever back them given their record? But I never lose faith. Every time they land in Australia, I just say, stay away from the water, stay away from those nice looking delights, and stay away from the pubs. Because something gets into our head that we can't translate that form and secure a win.
Yeah.
Hopefully history will be confounded and beaten.
Yes.
Yeah, if you liked this, hated it, or was disgusted by it, click the like button, because there's no disgusted or other button there. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Thanks, folks. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.